After recording the visit to toastytech.com video, I noticed that Nathan Lineback had contact info on his website. I figured, hey, it's probably a dead old email from 30 years ago. Wouldn't hurt to ask him anything. So I sent him an email asking if he'd be interested in doing an interview on all his old creative works over the years, as well as an attached 7-zip file containing the very early work-in-progress WADs of my MarsWar Map 8 remaster in various stages of development. To my surprise, he actually responded within a day or two, and was indeed available for an interview. So, I crowdsourced some questions from Doomworld, figuring that there'd be someone on there interested in asking him about his creative process. Unfortunately, I only got one on there, but whatever. Guess people are too busy playing 300 Lines Challenge, or 32 and 24 Speed Map Challenge number 5968, huh? Throughout the Let's Play series, I had a ton of questions just in my commentary alone. Unfortunately, I knew Nathan was a very busy man, so I didn't want to swamp him with questions. Even after trimming quite a lot of level-specific questions that he probably would have forgotten after 30 years, it still ended up being a whopping 59 questions. So, I put the most important questions in bold, with any personal questions he felt uncomfortable answering with an asterisk. When I finally got a reply several days later, I was shocked to see that not only did he answer all 59 questions plus the Doomworld user's comment, but he even played the remastered MarsWar Map 8 and gave some feedback on it. Even more crazy, he uploaded the original 1995 version of MarsWar, but it wasn't called MarsWar at the time. No, rather, it was called MacBash v1.0, because it was actually supposed to be an anti-Macintosh WAD. Rather than the animated blue screen of death textures, it had the old-school Macintosh GUI with a swastika appearing on it to tie into Spear of Bullshit. No Steve Jobs as the icon of sin face, sadly. There are other differences, but I'll upload a separate video. For these questions, I try to ask them in the creation's chronological order of release, starting with Spear of Bullshit. According to a Wikia page, Spear of Bullshit languished in obscurity online until it was discovered by Andy Anonymous on the Wolfenstein 3D Dome in 2005, 12 years after it was originally created. Was Spear of Bullshit ever released anywhere else besides toastytech? Nathan writes, I don't remember. I may not have released it anywhere prior. If I had, it would have been on the Library of Trent or BBS that my brother ran. I did distribute MacBash, the original MarsWar, there, where it got a glorious 7 downloads. Well, there you go. Nathan Lineback, truly the outsider artist of retro FPS. Were the Pepsi machine supposed to be a subtle condemnation of the soft drink ban by association, or was it simply a silly texture swap? Nathan responds, just a silly texture swap. I seem to recall I simply found a graphic that fit nicely, and since Duke Nukem 2D had Coke, why not? It literally didn't even occur to me until just now that it might cast the product in a bad light. It's just a game, blow stuff up, and relax. What was the story behind the inclusion of the evil Macintosh / Banana Jr. as the final boss? Nathan writes, at the time I was very anti-Macintosh. It was an underpowered, overpriced, overrated, effeminate attempt at a lockdown single-source toy. These days I hate smartphones. At the moment I still don't own a smartphone. Not sure what he means by effeminate. Is it because there was a woman in the commercial that throws the hammer? I don't know. Now we got questions for MEGAWAD.WAD. According to the Doom Wiki, you were the first person in known history to use the word MEGAWAD in its modern usage as a full level replacement for Doom. Can you recall if anyone else had used the word MEGAWAD for their releases beforehand? Nathan responds, I really don't know. It seems probable someone else used that word or something like it first, but I have no real way to check. I have a hard time believing people adopted that name because of my WAD. Of course, just throwing the word mega and WAD together to describe a large WAD isn't exactly rocket science. What I do recall is that I evaluated lots of uploaded levels for inclusion on my brother's BBS. I would not have used that name if I had seen any other WAD with that exact name, so it may have been the first popular WAD lamely named MEGAWAD. Well, there you go, straight from his mouth. I still go by the Doom Wiki in that it says he was the first one to properly use it, so let's give Nathan Lineback some credit after all these years of being snubbed. In the E2M7 slot of MEGAWAD.WAD, there is a map that starts out with the floating door yell pillars. Did this map inspire the iconic floating pillars in MarsWar's Map 7 Infestation? Nathan responds, "Not directly, I think. In that level, I was trying to float all kinds of objects, either as mid-textures in the sky, on the ceiling, or on invisible platforms. It seemed like floating metal bars, not attached to the ceiling or floor, was something that I had not seen done elsewhere, so I thought it made a good opening room for the level. In MarsWar, it introduces the idea that the laws of physics have gone out to lunch due to whatever space warp dimension breaking stuff that has occurred." Now onto the juicy stuff. Here's the MarsWar questions. I had plenty of questions about this, oh boy, oh boy. And honestly, I think any fan of MarsWar over these years would have had the same questions. You said that MarsWar was originally released in 1995, but with anti-Microsoft content added in 1998. The v2.0 text file states that Map 30 was originally just a terraforming station in Hell, but do you recall if anything else was different in v1.0? Nathan responds, "Well, originally it was supposed to be bashing Apple Macintosh a bit, but other than a lot of cleanup and the addition of the IEE and Bill Gates' face, it wasn't that much different." And well, after playing Mac Bash for myself, I can see he was right. A lot of Mac Bash made it into the later MarsWar, which means that all those nice details like the warp cores in Map 10 were always there. So yeah, that's Nathan, very visionary level designer for his time. Was Map 23, the Gates of Hell, 640k is enough for anyone, Bill Gates, originally in the 1995 version, or was it added in 1998? What will have originally been in its place? Nathan responds, "That was there originally." And yes, indeed, going back to Mac Bash, it was indeed in the same spot and in the same place. So even before he was a Microsoft hater, Nathan Lineback was a bit of a Microsoft hater. There you go. Do you still have the pre-Microsoft bashing MarsWar v1.0 WAD backed up anywhere? Nathan responds, "Yes. Since people have asked, I added it to my Doom page." When you re-released MarsWar in 1998 with the anti-Microsoft content added, were you aware of Ika Karunin and Anthony Cervanka's Dystopia 3 Rebirth of Anarchy Doom 2 episode from 1996, which ends with Microsoft headquarters blowing up? Nathan responds, "I don't recall seeing that one." I'm a bit disappointed that he didn't see the Microsoft headquarters blowing up, but again, it does kind of cement what I've always felt about this guy, that he really wasn't making WADs based on anything else he saw, and that he kind of stayed in his own little bubble. You stated in the text file that the first chunk of levels set on Mars were originally designed for Doom 1, not Doom 2. What was the earliest date you can remember working on what would eventually become MarsWar? Nathan writes, "I couldn't say offhand. I do recall the first level was the opening area in Betabase, and I started that in an earlier editor other than DEU. A little sad I didn't get a good answer for this, but part of me does think it did start development in 1994, just because considering how long it would take to make a full 32 maps back then. Or I guess 29 maps, but you know what I mean. That is interesting that Betabase was not exactly the first level he made, but rather just the first opening area, with that, like, soul sphere and the secret wall behind the start that I didn't show off, and all those little alcoves. I'm guessing that when he made the other Mars levels, he went back and made that level to match it. When you decided to make MarsWar into a full 32 map set, were you aware of NJ Doom by Nigel Rowand, NJ, which is widely considered to be the first one-man megawad in the community's history? Nathan responds, "Offhand, I don't recall that one." MarsWar is unique even today for having very exploration-heavy maps full of optional areas and secrets, which are often more interesting than the actual main paths themselves. There also seems to be an emphasis on interesting-looking buildings on very high ledges, as is the case with Map 4, Theta Base, and Map 15, The Fringes. Where did the inspiration for this signature mapping style of yours come from? Nathan responds, "Well, in many of the levels I was trying to break free from the flat 2D Wolf 3D type stuff. For the Mars levels, I wanted some canyons and cliffs for a spectacular landscape. Alpha Base, Theta Base, and the terraforming station were different in that they were meant as realistic places for the story I had developed in my mind, while the others were more abstract. The Fringes was meant to be surreal, featuring large silos and industrial buildings. I recall struggling with what exactly I should put in each of the buildings, but to keep the dizzying sense of surrealness, I wanted the player to look up and down, as much as one could do in Doom. By the way, the name The Fringes was from the TV show Max Headroom. In the show, the Fringes were the heavily abandoned industrial outskirts of the city, where much of the action took place. Well, that's very interesting to know. I would not have known that about the fringes, but it just goes to show his very old references, his very old sources of inspirations. On that note, quite a few levels in MarsWar like Map 16 Enlightenment, Map 17 Commercial Sector, and especially Map 24, 83E, are rather impressively large, yet their actual exits can be reached very, very quickly. This seems especially egregious in the case of Map 24, which not only has a clear progression with all 3 keys, but an obvious exit structure in that Blood Falls room past the explosive barrels trap as well. Why were these maps all designed to be like this? Nathan writes, I can't say precisely. Interesting question. Some of them may have grown outwards, and I didn't feel the need to move an exit. I guess that makes sense, considering his mapping style. Yeah, I do kind of see this. I do apologize if this question seems rude, but were the maps in MarsWar all first drafts? I ask because throughout the levels, there are bugs like misaligned textures, out-of-place textures, example given, Ashwell appearing in the pit of the all-skin edge room in Map 6 beta base, light sources that don't emit light, and constant mfloor 8_3, white rubble flats appearing inside doors as if it was the editor's default floor flat. That last bug also seems to pop up in the first map of Firefox Doom Party, by the way. Nathan responds, when I was evaluating early WADs in the BBS days, I encountered some that people uploaded that were 100% unaligned star 10.3, and plenty of others that were just hideous. Personally, I thought I was fairly meticulous compared to other levels of the time. Of course, that doesn't mean I didn't make plenty of errors or oversights. Working on details on a 480 or Pentium 1 in DEU meant constant unloading/loading of the editor in Doom. DEU was not very friendly in alignment. I recall having to pull out a calculator frequently to get things right. Some of the detailing people put in modern WADs could never work on the original DOS Doom, or would be impossibly slow on a computer of the time. I preferred to keep about the same level of detailing as the original Doom levels. That Ashwell is supposed to be the exposed skin burned by the lava. If I were doing an ultra-detailed version, I might use a custom burn skin texture that blended with the textures around it, but for something a player would only see for a few seconds, scroll down to Ashwell, hit enter, done. Oh, and those floors. The idea I had is those doors that move up and down should fit into something on the floor. They wouldn't just close on top of carpet or dirt. The better textures had grids that would not align if the door sector was angled on the map. While the rubble texture wasn't purpose, I thought it was best for this purpose, so I guess the idea didn't work too well. Well, that was some very fascinating insight, if I do say so myself. I never would have guessed that Ashwell was supposed to be burnt skin, but honestly that makes perfect sense now that he explains it. Looking back, the Ashwell actually did appear in those little alcoves the cacodemons spawned from too. So yeah, they might have been burning the flesh around them when they were bored waiting for you. So that's some nice environmental details. I would have, again, I would never have thought that when I see that texture. As for the rubble, yeah, I mean, I guess I can imagine it. It's like he's kicking up dirt if it's like going up and down. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the best choice of texture. Maybe if he just like reseeded the ground into the floor by about 1 to 2 map units, I don't know, maybe the effect would have looked a bit better, but I don't know. I mean, nowadays you could probably just put the door track texture on the ground with like ZDoom mapping format, but whatever. But yeah, and again, he has a very good point there with the detailing people put in modern WADs never working on the original DOS Doom. I mean, like, when you think about it, even a lot of those later vanilla maps, like in, I want to say, Alien Vendetta, Kim Andre Mold's maps, I doubt they would have ran on computers at the time Doom came out. No siree. So Nathan definitely does have a point here. Many people today seem to think that MarsWar was inspired by the TNT Evolution half of Final Doom, though I seem to recall Final Doom not coming out until 1996, which would have been after MarsWar v 1.0. Let's set the record straight. Was TNT Evolution in any way an influence on the creation of MarsWar? Nathan writes, I don't believe so. I vaguely recall the name TNT in a few large WADs that were supposed to be popular, but I think I only ever glanced at them, if those were even the same thing. Well, they definitely weren't. As far as I know, TNT Evolution was their premier release, and it didn't get released until a year after it was supposed to because of the id Software details, so there you go. Anybody who ever thought MarsWar was inspired by TNT Evolution, he has now been exonerated. On a similar note to that, next question, Was the look of the terraforming stations in the early part of the WAD inspired by the Doom and Alphas in any way, or was it just a coincidence? I did notice a recreation of one of the Alpha rooms in Map 32, Hell Labs. Nathan writes, yes, I had seen the May 22nd Alpha prior to the release, and rather liked the shiny metal style. Well, there you go. Nathan Lineback is definitely a fan of the Doom Alphas, just like I had theorized. All throughout MarsWar, you used very infamous textures like Brown 144, Greytall, and Fire Lava, which have fallen out of favor with the community due to their notoriously poor tiling in rooms taller than 128 units. Why did you make so many tall sectors that use these textures? Nathan responds, because I didn't have anything better, and those were the closest fit I had for whatever I was trying to do. I intentionally wanted to keep mostly with original Doom textures, not that I was ever a graphics artist. Now, an interesting point to make about this is that at some point Nathan must have realized these textures didn't tile very well. I didn't point this out in the playthrough, but somebody in the Doom World MEGAWAD Club thread pointed out that at the very beginning of Map 20, he actually created some transparent version of the black wall textures and another one of those window-looking textures to try to hide the seams in the tiling textures, yet he did not do the same for the actual main castle itself. Just wanted to point that out. Were the maps in MarsWar all made in order, or were some earlier maps, not counting the obvious Map 15, Map 20, and Map 25, made later? I ask this because the classic mousehole teleporter ambushes that are the backbone of Doom's encounter design are strangely absent throughout most of the original 29 levels, except Map 12, Map 22, and possibly another map that I forgot. Nathan writes, no, they just sort of grew individually and got rearranged over time. Most of them had individual design goals where I tried different things and then got merged in, so yeah, some inconsistency. Why was the difficulty in MarsWar so inconsistent? Many huge areas are underpopulated with heavy hitters, making ultra-violence feel more like hey not too rough, but then you'll suddenly have Plutonia-esque chain gunner firing squads or giant swarms of pain elementals only a few minutes later in the exact same map. Nathan writes, the approach I had was I created most of the levels as art, shapes and places I dreamed up or thought were interesting. Adding monsters and weapons was sort of secondary. As such, they didn't play as well as they could have. Well, that's a very interesting point he makes, because I realized after I uploaded some of these videos another very close comparison I could make with another pre-existing WAD. MarsWar is actually very similar to the old classic from 1995, Fava Beans by Sean Burkle, that classic E1 replacement. According to some comments he made, Sean Burkle actually created the levels for Deathmatch first, and then he just arbitrarily put the things, including all the weapons and monsters, into the levels later. He was really more about exploring. So that's very interesting that both Nathan Lineback and Sean Burkle had the same design philosophy when it came to making these levels. It's a shame that MarsWar never got the notoriety that Fava Beans ever ended up having, but you know, whatever. I doubt they'd ever give a cock award to something that bashes Microsoft so much considering who owns Doom now. On that note, pain elementals seem to appear strangely frequently throughout your works, even as late as Alpha DM. This enemy has become quite hated by the Doom community, especially after source ports removed their 21 Lost Souls limit. Any reason for the apparent affection towards this polarizing meatball? Nathan writes, I didn't like them either. Right parentheses. I probably just threw them in there where I wanted something a little tougher. As mentioned above, it was not very well playtested. Later Doom ports threw a lot of things off, such as having the ability to jump over ledges or through windows that had previously blocked the player. I mean, I guess this is an acceptable answer, but man, Nathan, you sure put a lot of fucking pain elementals throughout the WAD. The first handful of maps, Map 10 Transport Ship and Map 11 Dropship, seem to tell a really cohesive story entirely through environmental storytelling and blurbs in the text file, almost like Unreal would later do in 1998. At the time, such storytelling was entirely non-existent in first-person shooter games, as the technology was too primitive to make anything more than abstract geometry. What was the inspiration behind this early story-driven part of MarsWar? Nathan responds, just that I had the idea for the story already, and wanted my level design to express various ideas beyond just being a game level. Very simple answer, but hey, you know, it makes sense. He was making the story, he was making these levels as art. It kinda does make sense that he was making these levels primarily for the story first and the gameplay second. Again, one of those rare things that makes MarsWar stand out for its time. In Map 5 Crash Site, There is a secret that is accessible through a destroyed door with an inescapable pit in front of it. This door seems to be reachable if you use it on the very edge of the right side, but the Doomworld MEGAWAD Club thread from 2020 seemed convinced you needed to leave an enemy alive to open the door for you. What was the actual intended way to reach the secret? Nathan writes, as I recall, the intention was to be like carefully reaching over the trap to open the door. Not saying it was a good map idea, but it was a secret. MarsWar's maps all have their strange bits, but the circular spinning bricks room in Map 8, Bunker 0 strikes me as especially odd. What was the story behind this room? Nathan writes, I happened to glance at that level the other day. I think I really wanted some kind of huge mechanical texture, sort of a machine room with a spinning shell, but too complicated and no other texture looked good. So bricks it was. I think I just left it spinning as a placeholder, but never did make a custom texture. Laws of physics out the window. Bricks can spin, right parentheses. I always did have the idea that it was kind of meant to be moving machinery within the limits of vanilla Doom, so that is very interesting to see, and even for my remaster of that level, I had somewhat of the same idea, so it is interesting that Nathan's original concept was basically the same idea I had. Map 10 transport ships' twin warp drive cores are incredibly impressive visuals for 1995 and have impressed even modern Doom players. Some have even compared it to Ribik's Swim with the Whales WAD from 2013. Any particular bit of inspiration for this detail? Nathan writes, the warp drives? I think mostly Star Trek. The original series has these huge red who-knows-whats viewable through a window in engineering. No, it wasn't the warp nacelles. That sort of thing, but in blue. Surprisingly simple inspiration for such a grandiose visual, but yeah, I guess Nathan really was a genius for his time then. From Map 10 onwards, there is a recurring structure throughout many of the levels that features a large square, a triangle, and a circle stacked on top of each other with an evil eye on top. It even appears in the finished 2009 version of Map 20, Land of the Lame, replacing the Yasichi-like symbol from the Dream Doom version. The Doomworld MEGAWAD Club assumed this was supposed to be a melted warp core, but in my Let's Play series, I assumed it was a logo for the United Operations of Earth. What exactly was the structure meant to represent? Nathan replies, yeah, it was supposed to be a symbol related to whoever ran Earth. The one on the ship was lava to represent the ship's inhabitants' hatred for the Earth. I think they were burning it. Well, again, very interesting environmental storytelling there. Perhaps it would have helped to establish that logo before you first showed it in Map 10, but whatever. Again, in my Let's Play, I compared it to the Illuminati eye, so I don't know if that's what he was going for, if that's what inspired him, but there you go. I guess Microsoft is the Illuminati. Or should I say, Apple is the Illuminati, considering it was originally started as Mac Bash in 1995, now that we know. One player in the Doomworld MEGAWAD Club lamented the BFG 9000 in Map 11 dropship being replaced by a plasma gun in V3.01, as it makes pistol starts unreasonably difficult. What was the reason you made this change, especially considering that BFG 9000s had appeared in earlier maps before this? Nathan responds, I don't remember the precise reason, but I had attempted to make some general balance/difficulty changes. It looks like it should appear in the easier play modes. I had had some criticism around that time that some maps are too generous with the weapons. In Map 15, The Fringes, you have an Easter egg referencing GUR from Invader Zim. This strikes me as remarkably odd, considering this same MEGAWAD has an Easter egg referencing MarsWar all the way back from 1973. Any particular bit of inspiration for this, or do you just happen to like the little guy? Nathan responds, yeah, I liked Invader Zim and GUR. It's not broken, it's advanced. I'm gonna sing the Doom song now. Well, let it be known, Nathan Lineback is a fan of Invader Zim. This next question was very important to me. In Map 21, Highway to Hell, the switch to lower the pillars blocking the blue skull key also lowers an adjacent window to show the players what just happened. Even now in 2026, this strikes me as a really well-designed bit of level design that you rarely see authors attempt even today. Do you recall any of your thought processes for this map in particular? Nathan writes, I'm big on user interface design, even though some levels intentionally go against friendliness. You flip a switch and you have no idea what you just did.
Whoa, what the hell did that do?
Yeah, that would be really annoying in the real world. Well, surprisingly simple answer for such a complex level design thing, but considering again, just like I said in the toastytech video, you really do need to read his website to get the full context behind MarsWar and all his other creations. A lot of him really shows through his work, and even now you could see toastytech was originally created to show off graphical user interfaces, so with his preferences for easy to use user interface, it goes to show that it transfers to his level design processes, that he wants his level design to be intuitive too. Very, very nice to know. This next question is a real riot. In Map 29 Choices, you feature a large open area with 70 Revenants and 1 Cyber Demon and a clear homage to Map 8 Tricks and Traps from Doom 2. This room has been retroactively declared one of the very first instances of slaughter map gameplay in a Doom WAD. What are your thoughts on this, and indeed, slaughter maps in general? Nathan responds, slaughter map? I think level after level of that would not be very interesting, but I felt it made for a different kind of challenge that level. Well, there you go. There you go, Doom community. Nathan Lineback is not very much a fan of slaughter maps. There you go. Not very interesting indeed. Oh boy. What inspired you to finally go back and finish the last 3 levels in 2009? Nathan writes, it never felt right using someone else's work as part of my own WAD. Plus I had been playing some Skulltag with various newer levels at the time that overall gave me new ideas on how to complete the old levels I had. Looking back at MarsWar in hindsight, would you have done anything differently with the knowledge you have about Doom level design today? Nathan writes, well, yeah. Better weapon balance, playtesting, organization, deathmatch considerations. A pretty simple answer, but hey, again, Doom, Nathan doesn't strike me as the kind of person who has much time for Doom anymore, so, maybe he's too busy to really consider what would go into making MarsWar Gen 2, but it is very interesting to think he wasn't very fond of deathmatch considerations, considering that a lot of the levels seem like they were made with deathmatch in mind. I know that the first map was created as a deathmatch map, according to the text file, but some of the levels, sort of like Map 13, the warehouse, they did have very early kind of deathmatch layouts. Maybe not so much like the modern idea of deathmatch levels with very fast-paced action, but if you think like those old-style, mazy kind of deathmatch levels like you'd see in N64 GoldenEye, I don't know, it kind of struck me as being made for deathmatch first, and I could see exactly where the goodies would have been for deathmatch. Now we're moving on to Firefox Doom Party. What exactly was the story behind Firefox Doom Party's creation after an 8-year hiatus following MarsWar v2? Nathan writes, at the time I had been playing some Skulltag, and Mozilla was looking for individuals to help spread Firefox. That gave me some inspiration to work on some old levels and create new ones. As I showcased in the Dream Doom work in progress level set, some of the quite a few of the Firefox levels indeed were created sometime around the 90s, and he finished them up for 2006. Did you create New Gun C.PK3, or was it a pre-existing weapons mod? Nathan writes, no, someone else made it, but I recall having to modify it to work in the then current version of Skulltag. It has some old guts in it that need to be rewritten. Very interesting to hear. I could not find any information on New Gun C.PK3, no matter how much I looked on the internet. It really seems like his upload is the last surviving version of that WAD on the internet, although I could have just not looked very hard. Oh no, who knows. There are a few middies in this WAD credited to Patrick May. Was he an online friend of yours or something? Nathan writes, it was created by a fan of my site. There is a strange disconnect between the levels in this WAD. Most of them feel too large and empty for deathmatch play, but a few of them, in particular Map 5, Map 6, and Map 8, feel much more like traditional deathmatch maps with tight gameplay and weapon placements. These maps also happen to look much better. Was this simply just part of the learning process, or did you get some valuable criticism on map designing at some point? Nathan replies, these were designed for deathmatch, and I thought most of them played fairly well. Map 9 was indeed way too large. Again, these were developed at different times and tried different ideas going in different directions. In Map 2, Doom Paradiso, used Wolfenstein 3D's blue wall textures long after using the Wolf 3D textures had become a faux pas in the community. Any particular reason for this? Nathan writes, That level was one of my dream-inspired levels, so it was a little surreal. It's just what I dreamed up. Huh. Very, very interesting to hear. But again, considering how surreal a lot of his level design is, that makes sense that this one came from a dream too. Map 9, The Gates of Hell, seems similar to Map 29, Dreadmond, from DreamDoom.WAD. Is the joke supposed to be that it's based on the layout of Microsoft's offices in Redmond, Washington, and that's why it's hell? Nathan responds, yes, that is a layout of Microsoft Redmond offices, and yep, that hell. In Map 9, The Gates of Hell, there is a unique weapon that has a goofy face on the Internet Explorer logo and creates a giant explosion that kills the player. Did you create this little character, or did he come from some old viral video back in the 2000s? Nathan responds, it was from a Firefox marketing video. I added tentacles to make it attach itself uninstallably to the player. Well, that was very, very interesting to learn. I did not know about that viral video, but I will say it is pretty funny for its time. As for the tentacles, I gotta be honest, I originally, when I saw the sprite, I thought it was like blue clouds, but now that I look at it, I see the suckers, so yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Nice to know. Here we got the questions for Alpha Deathmatch. What exactly was the story behind Alpha DM's creation? I thought it was from the 1990s when I first played it, but the earliest date it appears on your website was 2007, and it has a completed version of Map 32 from DreamDoom.WAD, first released in 2006 as far as I know, in it. Nathan writes, yeah, I just wanted my own take on the alpha levels and set them up for some deathmatch. I assume he was playing them on Skulltag at the time. In Map 8, you feature the return of the Doom-Cute vending machine from Map 15, The Fringes from MarsWar. Were this and the MarsWar 15 vending machines meant to be a callback to the Pepsi machines from Spirit Bullshit? Looking back at Dream Doom, it was also in either Map 5 or Map 6 of that. I can't remember exactly which one. Nathan responds, probably, yes. Now we got Work in Progress / Dream Doom. In the text file, you mentioned that you used to evaluate Doom WADs for your brother's BBS. Were you like a critic or a level design guru back in the day? Nathan responds, no, I just evaluated uploaded WADs for inclusion on the BBS and updated download descriptions. All wall Star 10-3? Nope, goes in the trash. Only 2 square rooms? Trash. Oof. Sorry, MarsWar.WAD. You're not good enough for the Library of Trantor, unfortunately. Now we got Ranma 1/2 skins. Yes, even though it was a very minor WAD, I had at least one question about this that I felt I wanted to know the answer to. Based on this WAD and 2 of the maps in Firefox Doom Party, I would guess that you're a fan of Rumiko Takahashi's works. What are your thoughts on the modern remakes of Urusei Yatsura and Ranma 1/2? Nathan writes, I have not had time for movies or anime in ages. I had not heard of newer remakes. Well, that's a little disappointing, but honestly, considering who he is and his age and what he does for a living, it does kind of make sense that he doesn't really have time for this kind of stuff anymore. So yeah, I guess we definitely don't have to worry about him wearing the programmer socks while working on Linux and watching Ranma 1/2. Now moving on to the toastytech.com questions. You've been hosting this website in some form for nearly 30 years now with no advertisements, no trackers, not even a donation link. I'm assuming it's being run at a loss then. Is there any personal reason you've kept this Web 1.0 time capsule of anti-Windows 98 vitriol and juvenile 90s humor alive for so many years? Nathan responds, these days it is more about keeping my GUI pages out there and just having a site and email that I have direct control over. I do still add an occasional rant to the old Microsoft Rants page. Going through the oldest archive versions of the pages from 2002, it seems there are some articles that were gradually phased out over time and others that were altered. Were there any reasons you chose not to keep these articles? Nathan responds, yes, mostly the context around some of the pages had changed, so they were not as funny anymore. The old F-Fun pages wouldn't make sense unless someone had seen Microsoft's hilariously bad Fin pages. Wait, 2002? Ah, the earliest version of my site was hosted at a different URL before I got my own domain. And there you go, he's got his own link to his original website from 1999, which you can so graciously view in the description. You hosted your Doom and Wolfenstein creations here for years, far away from the mainstream communities from these games. I assume you released them on your brother's BBS back in the day, but why did you never release any of them onto the main community websites like the id Games archive until the MarsWar update in 2009? Nathan responds, "It was the BBS that kept me involved with looking at uploaded levels. After that stop, I just moved on to other things." It's kinda sad to think that he wasn't really willing to archive his old stuff, but I guess if he figured if it was good enough for his website, then hey, whoever wanted to find it could find it. Was there any reason you never wrote about any of the Quake games on your webpage or made any mods for them? Nathan responds, "I think it was about the time of Quake that I had moved on to other things. I recall I had played through Quake 1 and 2, but never really messed with any mods for it." I noticed that the Bill Gates Borg face from MarsWar was featured on one of the pages. Did you create this image yourself, or did you find this randomly on the web back then? I suppose this question could apply to all the funny little images on there, but the Bill Borg interests me the most. Nathan responds, "It was a popular anti-Microsoft image floating around at the time. I did not create it." This next one's a bit of a personal question. You have a recent article on there complaining about Publix's prices and having to shop at Walmart. Have you considered trying the Aldi supermarket chain if any are located nearby? Nathan responds, "The nearest one is quite a drive away from me. It has been a while since I last went there, but yeah, it was a nice enough store and at the time had okay prices." Well, there you have it, folks. Nathan Lineback endorses Aldi, even if he can't really shop there. I know that feeling with Costco. Are you aware that your website is the first search result for PathWorks Mosaic in most major browsers? I said browsers in this question, but what I really meant was search engines, but yeah, whatever. Tomato, tomato. Nathan responds, "That is one of the nice things about having a real website where content isn't locked away behind some login or shared with a million people spewing gibberish." Okay, this next question really surprised me. What are your thoughts on Valve and their contributions to the Linux community through the Steam Deck and SteamOS? Nathan responds, "I've never looked at those, but I do think that it is important for games to be available on Linux, and that requires a good deal of OS and API stability, so if that helps the popularity of Linux, then that is good." Well, considering how busy Nathan is, I'm kind of not surprised that he's never heard about the Steam Deck and SteamOS. I guess he really did just give up gaming when he turned like 20-something. I guess he, for as funny and weird as his websites and creation were, I guess deep down he really was a normie all along. And this next question, oh boy, I didn't know what he was going to answer to it, but I was a little disappointed, unfortunately. As the person who wrote all those humorous anti-Bill Gates articles back in the day, what are your thoughts on Bill Gates' connections with deceased New York financier and convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, which only seem to look worse for him with each new set of files that have been released? Nathan replies, "I have not read up on what Bill Gates has had to do with any of that." Oh boy. Boy, oh boy, Nathan. You've got a lot of reading to catch up on. I guess this does kind of go along with the theory I had that he was very much, I just want to grill for God's sakes, but yeah. Nathan, if you really do hate Bill Gates as much as your old articles implied, you'd be happy to know that the sexually transmitted diseased cause of death might just be more accurate than you predicted back in 1998. Oh, Nelly. Final set of questions is regarding the Doom community. As someone who was around for the earliest days of the Doom community, I was wondering what interesting takes he would have. This first question I actually asked mostly in response to all the strangely positive feedback that Doom 2 has gotten over the most recent years on sites like Doomworld and Reddit. Doom 2 has garnered a very negative reputation in the years since it came out, mostly targeted at the level design. What do you remember the general consensus on Doom 2 was back in the day? Nathan writes, "What I seem to recall was that a lot of people just bought Doom 2 so they could run the latest WADs. The levels it came with weren't as fun as those in Doom 1, but the extras it bought to 30-tardy levels was nice." And that makes a lot of sense. Doom 2 always has sort of the vibe of a mission pack sequel, so the idea that people were only buying it just to play new WADs, that's pretty fucking funny, I would say. Sorry, Sandy Peterson. Guess you gotta go back on Kickstarter, huh? As a Doom level designer yourself, what were your thoughts on the master levels in Final Doom back when they came out? Nathan writes, "Personally, I didn't care for those. I'm more of a running through abandoned bases, exploring for treasures and power-ups person than a counting the number of pistol bullets it takes to kill some big monster getting through some arbitrary trap type person. I'm assuming he means Plutonia with this one. Although I could just as well be talking about something like teeth.wad. And yeah, you know what, that's a fair take. Compared to the iWads, the master levels in Plutonia were quite a huge step up in difficulty, so considering how his levels were designed, I could see why he would think this way. Remember, back in the day, before the WASD and mouse days, people's skill sets really were different. What are your thoughts on id Software now being owned by Microsoft? Nathan replies, Microsoft bought id Software? Crap. Shows how much I've been paying attention. But these days, any company that is still in business somehow is a good thing. 99% of levels from 1994 and 1995 are generally considered to be completely unplayable by today's standards for a number of reasons, like hideous texturing, no details, no texture alignment, poor lighting, boring gameplay, and confusing level design. Were these flaws as apparent back then? I noticed that you did have some fairly decent choices in MEGAWAD.WAD for the most part, at least compared to Heroes.WAD from the following year. Nathan's answer is very interesting here. Texturing and details are just the icing on the cake. It's a cohesive layout and progression that is important. There were plenty of levels that were just arbitrary trap after trap. That gets boring. I think it is important to have something going on, some sort of purpose in the level, yet not something that gets in the player's way more than they want. I saw that you had some levels like Doomsday of the UAC and MEGAWAD.WAD that had become legendary over the years. Have you played any other notable community WADs from back in the day, like Memento Mori 1 and 2, Requiem, Hell Strain, Hell Revealed, Darkening Episode 1 and Episode 2, and an Alien Vendetta, etc.? Nathan replies, I don't specifically recall. I looked at lots of levels around that time, but never got too deep into any of them. And again, this sort of goes hand in hand with my idea that Nathan really was in his own bubble, not trying to make levels like anybody else's. So that makes sense that he would have never played anything famous like Memento Mori or Requiem or Strain. Have you been keeping up with the Doom community's releases since 2009 when you were last active, or does Doom just not interest you anymore? Nathan writes, well, I have many more things to keep me busy these days, have not time for any kind of games in many, many years. Yeah, I definitely get the idea from a lot of these answers that he's a very, very busy man with work and family, so I do kind of feel bad for, like, annoying him all these years after he made these WADs and he stopped caring about it, but, you know, again, it's a very rare opportunity that you rarely get, and he's the one that, you know, agreed to the interview anyway. Doom has a habit of bringing the old heads back time after time. Just recently, John Landis created a new level in 2025, 28 years after his last levels were featured in Strain. Has the thought of making a new Doom level ever crossed your mind? Nathan writes, if I happen to dream something up, I wouldn't totally rule that out. But given time, energy levels, and other interests, it does not seem too likely. And yeah, this was a bit of a personal question. I didn't want to, like, kind of push him into making a new Doom level, but it was just curious considering a lot of old heads have come up back so many times over and over. And the final question. As one of the earliest Doom level designers, do you have any advice on making Doom levels for the aspiring young Doom mappers out there? Nathan writes, well, decide who you are making the maps for, other people or for yourself. When designing for other people, understand that you may need to curb or change your designs to meet what they want. I usually recommend focusing on general layout and gameplay before investing too much time in detailing. You can take inspiration from all kinds of sources, real-world places, movies, and so on. Making level can be a fun hobby if you have time, but don't get so into games that you overlook real-world obligations or personal/professional betterment. Well, Nathan, I don't think a lot of the Doom World and ZDoom and other Doom Reportage projects and other websites have to worry about those things, but yeah, anyway. Well, that was the interview with Nathan Lineback, a look into the visionary mind behind some of the most unique, weird, and wacky Doom and Wolfenstein 3D creations from the early 90s. Perhaps the most strange thing about the interview was finding out that this such a strange and interesting man was actually quite down-to-earth and, dare I say, boring, underneath all the floating toothbrushes and fruit fuckers juicing the Doom guy to death. Oh boy, I should have asked about that. Yeah, honestly, I get that. I mean, I don't want to be rude, But thinking about this guy now compared to back then, he's talking about you gotta manage your time, doesn't have time for games, doesn't have time for movies, doesn't have time for anime. Compared to the guy that used to make Ranma 1/2 skins for the internet, I can't help but picture friggin' Mr. Incredible sitting at his cubicle desk, being crushed by reality. I guess that's just the sad thing about life. Nathan Lineback is living proof. You know, jobs and life just crush your spirit. Makes me wonder if Nathan Lineback sometimes looks back at those wacky floating toothbrushes and think, you know, what could have been in another lifetime. I actually was gonna originally ask him if he had any professional game design credits to his name, but I thought again that would be maybe a bit of an invasion of his privacy. I honestly think a lot of these questions might have been an invasion of privacy. That's why I was so shocked that he answered every single one of them. But again, Nathan, you know, such a busy man, yet he's able to make time to answer all these questions, and for that I really do commend him. What a trooper. What a trooper. Yeah, very interesting answers to a lot of these questions. Really goes to show what a creative and unique mind he has. I never would have guessed in a million years that those ash wall textures were supposed to be anything other than a bug, or like he originally placed a different texture there, or even that the white rubble floors were supposed to be like the doors crushing the earth underneath them. Very, very interesting insight, and again, only a mind like Nathan Lineback could come up with these ideas. Hearing his answers to some questions involving slaughter maps in detail, it also does give a very unique insight into Doom mapping that you'd hear almost nobody who plays Doom today say. It is very interesting to hear that he does not care much for slaughter maps, and that he thinks fighting too many enemies at one time is boring. Again, it does go to show that he is the old school kind of adventure mapper type person. He doesn't really care for combat that much at all. And who can blame him? A lot of WADs, especially from the late 90s and early 2000s, got way too grindy with the gameplay. I say this after having finally finished 2002 A Doom Odyssey and just straight up rage quitting on MassMath 2 because it sucked so bad. Even today, a lot of people outside the usual Doom circles complains about so-called slaughter slop, giant empty maps that use excessive detail to hide the fact that the layouts are nothing more than giant circles with monsters in them. You know, Nathan really does have a point that the layouts do come first, but it really seems like very few people in the Doom community today are willing to listen to him. He makes a very good point about making WADs for yourself versus making WADs for other people, and again, it goes hand in hand with what I've been saying this whole playthrough, how it really feels like he was making this stuff for nobody but himself. It's like, do you really want to have a giant monocolored void with a million monsters to fight? Or are you only making that to get a CAC award? Are you only doing that for the approval of your peers? Honestly, I mean, he's right. All you young Doom mappers out there, you gotta listen to your heart. I mean, it's nice to get attention and all, but at the end of the day, are people really going to be talking about your shitty slaughter map 10 years, 20 years later, the same way we talk about stuff like fava beans or Nuke Mine, Come Get Some, or even, you know, MarsWar itself? Nathan Lineback reminds me a lot of another early Doom author by the name of Seamus Young, who I think is best remembered for Doom City, which won a posthumous CAC award around 2018, as well as some other really good WADs like Phobos Relive the Nightmare and Torment from 96 and 95 respectively. Very good early level designer, and again, a lot like Nathan Lineback, very interesting ideas for his time, very offbeat, very humorous levels, very lots of Doom cute details that try to emulate real life. And he was very much aware of the limitations of the Doom engine, so he had to erase details. But the unfortunate thing about Seamus Young is that we'll never get the chance to talk to him, because a few years ago he actually passed away. So that's why I really wanted to savor this chance at an interview with somebody who made a really nice Doom one I played a long time ago. And you know, just to see any possible creative input he had into it. But anyway, yeah, for anybody who's watched this whole video series up until now, thank you so much for watching. And for anybody who only watched 1 or 2 videos, well, you know, that's great too. I'm glad you at least bothered to watch this till the end so you could hear this. But yeah, thank you all for watching this series, and thank you, Nathan, for giving the world something very interesting to talk about 30 years after its original release.